So welcome Dr. Wang once again. And his topic for today is theatrical consumption of the film imported from China in Malaysia. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to pass the session now to Dr. Wang.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmad, for the introductions. And it's my pleasure to conduct this public talk via virtual platforms to every one of you guys this afternoon. And this is some of the session which illustrate and display what I find from my latest research, which focused on the cinematic consumptions of the films imported from China across Malaysia. But of course, by looking at this topic, we will have some necessary study on the past record, especially by looking at the formal collaborations that the film industry demonstrate across China and Malaysia. But before that, I also wanted to mention that for today's topic, we'll basically cover a few keywords, and this will be the key takeaways for you guys, which embrace the culture trade, Chinese studies, Malaysian cinema markets, as well as the transnational cinema. As what I mentioned, if we try to look back the history of the way people who from two nations to produce film, we still need to understand when these two countries established the diplomatic relation. And that will happen in 1974 when the then Malaysian Prime Minister Tun Abdul Razak paid official visit to China. And this is actually remarked as the first country from Southeast Asia to build up this diplomatic relation with the People's Republic of China. And because of that, we have more chances to realize and witness the collaborations and any movement between these two nations. However, the history for making film together between Malaysia and China, it can be slightly earlier than the date we sign up this diplomatic relation. If you try to look at the history of Malaysia or history of film in Malaysia, Singke, the English title, The Immigrant, which remarked as the first film produced and made in Malaya. And this is the film were produced by one of the China producer. And this film is representing the very important stage where different people from different nations come to Malaysia to make films. The first film that made in Malaysia is all about the life and social struggles of the newly arrived Chinese in Singapore. This is actually written in the book published in 2018 by Low. Book title is the Moon Quintet. So you can search the book. Probably you may find more interesting findings about the film that people made in Malaysia, entitled Xingke. In the center, I also shared with the film poster that is written in Chinese but actually published in Singapore at that time. And this is the very interesting record that we have to recognize if we try to look at the topic today. But why we want to study this, it also has a certain motivations for me to address the issues. The first thing that we want to look at it is the role that China plays in the world stage. Especially in 2001, China joins the World Trade Organization. And this particular date of assigning the ceremony of China's accessions to the World WTO, it compared China or Chinese media and culture sectors to face a greater challenges from a global broadcast and a media industry. I'm not sure how many of you guys heard of the words which is called the Belt and Road Initiative. And this is the current initiative that the government of the People's Republic of China is promoting. And Malaysia is definitely a part of it. And One Belt, One Road, we also call it the OBOR, is a brainchild of the Chinese President Xi Jinping, and which is an ambitious economy development and a commercial project that focuses on improving connectivities and cooperations among multiple countries spread across the continents of Asia, Africa, and Europe. Basically, this project covers two parts. As the name itself indicate, one is a belt and the other one is road. From the picture that I choose to illustrate, you can see there is a orange, green, and red color, and that actually can be symbolized as the word called it a belt, because this is the land-based and expect to connect China with the Central Asia, East Europe, and West Europe. The other part of this project is called the 21st Century Marine Silk Road, that you can see in the picture labeled in the blue color and dark blue, that connects these regions as mentioned, which including the Southeast Asia. That's actually the purpose when I try to give you guys a bigger pictures to look at the context of the subject today. But Malaysia is also an amazing country where you will have a number of studies to study the multilinguistic or multicultural combination of the country and certain necessary, let's say, the aspect to study. In my past study published in 2019, I said that the Malaysian cinema itself is actually an aggregated form that denotes a varied multilingual source of film and having growing up with it, which means when you have these combinations of diverse multi-ethnic groups, people may have a different ways to consume various of cultural products. Film definitely is one of them. And because of these diversities and the nature of the populations in Malaysia, people may looking forward to having various ways to develop its own film industry. But in other words, we also put that segmentations occurs in Malaysia's cinema industry. However, we still have to see the other necessary mutual concessions, which is actually local and foreign content in catering to audiences and consumer and the national expectation. That's also amazing part that drive me to study the context in Malaysia and how Malaysians consume and accommodate the film productions from mainland China. And also, various studies also proved that Malaysians' freedom of media is a highly contested one. Because of these, people have to find a way to ensure the products imported from the certain regions and countries are sellable and also perceived by the targeted audiences. The very important film that I want to stress on today is this film entitled Wolf Warrior. And that become a very important time frame for me to looking at the theatrical consumptions of the film imported from China in Malaysia. Because of this film was released in 2017, it brings a lot of discussion. At the same time, we witnessed a big success of box office earning in Malaysia. So many news and other organizations discuss about this film. People may consider this as a typical film represent the Chinese propaganda, but people also see another pictures which illustrate the Chinese heroisms that also representing the responsibilities as a big country. That brings some of the also athletics appreciations towards Chinese kung fu or action movie genre or war fighting and firefight, maybe the gunfighting, etc. So all these elements that cater the needs of local audiences. I want to show you guys the trailer of the film. From this trailer, you will probably understand the reason why it gains popularities in Malaysia. Yeah, this is actually the trailer of Wolf Warrior #2. And this film was imported in Malaysia in 2017. This film was very popular in mainland China as well. It made a lot of box office earning and become a very remarkable film in the history of Chinese cinema. However, when I mentioned that, we also have a certain people discuss about the intentions of making this film, including the leading actor of this film, who is from the United States, who was the actor of the Marvel's series. There is one interview I obtained from the YouTube channel. Then people shared some of the site about this interview as well. If you're interested, you can search this afterwards. There are probably a number of comments may bring your attention as well. But my discussion today has nothing to do with a comment about this interview material. But what I'm trying to say is Chinese filmmakers putting a lot of efforts to make film that brings some of a sense of responsibilities as a big nation. But when the film released in the other nations, it become a topic. When it becomes a topic for the people who distribute the film, maybe the income is the thing that wanted to happen. The revenues definitely can be secured. However, we still want to look at the sustainabilities of these kind of trading behaviors between China and other nations, definitely including Malaysia. So let's look at the interview material. Later, I will elaborate on these things as well.
Dr. Wang, just to let you know that we can't hear any sound from the clip.
No sound.
Yes.
Just now in the earlier video.
Same actually, but I thought it was, yeah. But since this is an interview, so I thought that I'm just going to highlight that we can't hear the sound.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, because just now actually when I tried it, it works when
I see.
Dr.
I,
Ted.
I guess that's how technology is sometimes. Like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I try to maybe skip the video and let you guys maybe to listen to what I think about this
Sure.
session. Yeah.
All right.
So anyhow, in this interview, the actor whose name is his name is Frank Grillo. And people may know him because he acted in the film entitled The Captain America, and also acting in the other films as a Big Daddy. So he was interviewed by this interviewer when they talk about the experiences with the productions of Wolf Warrior, and he used some of the words to indicate his experience. For instance, he said that, "Oh, that's ridiculous." So have a super nice pay, and these actually some of the words got my attention as well, which means probably the experience of making the film together with the Chinese crew weren't that pleased. However, he was amazed by the box office performance of this Wolf Warrior 2. And definitely he has not too much, he didn't say anything against the productions or anything about it, but he just find this is a very amazing experience working with the crew member from China. And that's actually the film story. But of course, my study focused on the entire, how to say, the cinematic consumptions of all the films imported from China across Malaysia. And also this is based on the number of literature studies. That's why the Gova study is to fill the research void by analyzing the theatrical consumption of the film imported from China in Malaysia. And this study covers 3 sections of literature, which include the China Global Culture Presents, Malaysian China Cultural Exchange, and lastly is about the Chinese films released in Malaysia. By looking at these 3 segments of relevant literature, I found very interesting, very necessary motivations for me to do such study. Precisely when we talk about the imported films in certain nations, what we come across in our mind would probably soft power, and some words like that. So that's why it brings the same attention to my study, which is focused on what existing study to discuss the China's global culture presence. And there's some research published done by Chinese scholars and also others. In one of the articles entitled Made in China Across the Barrier, the empirical study on the overseas performance of Chinese produced motion picture. This study was published quite earlier, that was around 2009. In this study, they try to analyze the business models of the Chinese produced motion picture in the overseas market. But unfortunately, this study do not illustrate according to the national classic categories. It is very general. It doesn't give a very specific descriptions according to the select regions. However, this is that the articles I found very much more interesting and very motivating as well. They are come up from the same author, Michael. He wrote a number of articles about the China's soft power ambition, about the China's media industry, about the China's role of the media industry in the general pictures across different countries. And in his studies, there are so many valuable points that drove my attention. And as what I mentioned, China's soft power ambition is definitely one of them. And with that, I move towards some of further discussions and elaborations on the topic as well. And Michael also published a number of some other articles looking at the challenges that China has to deal with. So that's why in the article entitled China's Digital Media Industry and Challenges of Overseas Market, it is kind of a constructive study that provides valuable suggestions to anybody who wants to import films or import any media productions to their own country. And that's why I also further study what are the existing study by looking at the regional markets. But unfortunately, there's no study focused on film, but there are some studies focused on the TV dramas. And that's why we have a so-called pictures to illustrate the relevant study topic. I may not elaborate one by one today. But based on these collections of the relevant literature, which let me understand more about the China's global picture presence, I can conclude that this study demonstrates a consensus that China should play a regional player. And some of these studies recognize China's success in the regional culture and media markets, which would ultimately trigger a wave of national pride. And when I try to look at the clearer pictures about the Malaysian-China culture exchange, that also gives me another level of motivation. I think as researchers, we always want to do something that others yet done. So that's why I found there are few existing studies focused on the culture exchange activities between China and Malaysia, but some of them do particularly discuss China's culture trade from the perspective of geopolitics and economics. And some of them also implicitly describe the current status of a Malaysia-China culture exchange, but without any specific paradigm. And there also no any existing research which particularly examine the Malaysian-China culture exchange and relevant event in the context of Belt and Road Initiative, as what I discussed in the beginning as the introduction. However, there is one book chapter in the book entitled Transnational Side of a China Cultural Diplomacy. It has certain sections describe the cultural exchange between Malaysia and China. And he has one of the statement which also I agree with, is one of the Chinese strategy to win the heart and minds of a Malaysian is to cultivate existing historical ties and offer a vision of a mutual beneficial partnership based on the shared interest. I believe this is also the way how we manage more partnerships and collaborations, and also have more ways to do Malaysian-China cultural exchange. In some of other article has no direct connections with the cultural and film studies, but they also mentioned, for example, in the article entitled China-Malaysia Trade, Investment and Cooperation in the Context of China-ASEAN Integrations of a 21st Century Marine Silk Road Construction. This study actually studied a number of cases in Malaysia, happened to some of the top corporates of Chinese, these top corporate from mainland China, but they have branches in Malaysia. They also highlight the important message. I think my current affiliations is a part of this discussion as well. You and etc. mentioned that the higher education cooperation between Malaysia and China function as a tie and China of cultural and educational exchange between China and Malaysia. This is all about what we have found when we talk about the Malaysian-China cultural exchange. It seems less people discuss about the media production or any film production in specific. So that's why I try to search, is there any existing study, let's say a case study, looking at one or two films imported from China, released in Malaysia, how people look at this phenomenon. So that's why I try to see a section entitled Chinese film released in Malaysia. I believe whoever study Malaysian cinema will know this author, William, and in his 2002 publication entitled Malaysian Cinema, Asian Cinema, he's also point out that in the 1920s and early 1930s, films from China, India, Indonesia, and Western countries were shown across Malaysia. From this article, he also demonstrates that the Malaysian film culture is historically open and accommodative. But there's so less study focused on the contemporary era. What I can only found is a little bit relevancies to the title about the Chinese film release in Malaysia. The latest one was published by Wang Yiman in 2008, entitled The Transnational as Methodology, Transnationalizing Chinese Film Studies, so the example of the love parody and its Chinese remakes. When she studied the Chinese remakes, Malaysia or Southeast Asia is one of the section as well. After that, we do not see any other existing study focused on the Chinese film released in Malaysia. In contemporary era, film made in China are still introduced to Malaysian audiences. We have to acknowledge the fact. However, it's very hard to see any empirical and systematic studies which continuously discuss the development of filmic communications between these two countries and address the present business model of the film from China has been released across Malaysia. So that's why this is the gap this research is aiming to fill up. But before I move towards to explain the conceptual framework or theoretical framework, I purposely to select a number of book covers. I believe whoever studies film studies or culture studies know the concept about the transnationalism, and etc. There are so many publications talk about the transnational cinema, including transnational Chinese cinema, that specifically talk about the Chinese film industry and also its transnational cinematic movement. The same goes to the other titles such as the World Literature, Transnational Cinema, and Global Media. So this study was actually inspired by one of the Chinese scholar, whose name is Ling Songwen, and he is currently working for the university in Hong Kong. And actually, from my slides, I do never expect you guys to read through my slides. Whenever you see the wordy slides, means it's just for the purpose of making these images occupied. I never expect people to read through the slides, and also I won't read slides as well. The reason why I mentioned that, okay, because I want to showcase how we supposed to build up this framework to study the transnational film study. And this is actually very important for us to look at the current status of the conceptual framework of transnational cinema. Ling Songwen is the one who suggests to revise the concept of the framework of transnational cinema in 2019, which is just 1 year ago. And he also called us with the others talk about the concept of transnational cinema towards a critical transnationalism in film studies. And I personally agree with this point. And that's why this study also adopts the revised framework of transnational cinema. And these become the important components of my theoretical framework. I shall not elaborate so much over here, but of course, you can search more information about this study when we have chances to publish out. When I try to doing this study, as what I mentioned all the time, there are so many motivations for me to look at this topic. From one of the reasons is the film, The Wolf Soldier 2, were released in Malaysia. It gained popularities across Malaysia. It became a topic people discuss in the industry and also academically. At the same time, when China have a certain policies initiative to connect the world, for example, Belt and Road Initiative, it have these importances of connectivities across Asia, Europe, South and also Africa. And these are some of the things motivate us to look at how the cultural productions supposed to function in this kind of background. By doing so, I need to get a necessary insights from the people who are distribute the film, who are sell the film in Malaysia. I also want to know how the authorities to manage this kind of trade behavior or activities. This study basically employs two methods to study the China's film export to Malaysia and also Malaysia theatrical appreciations of the film works made in China. I did in-depth interview with a number of distributors in Malaysia. And the purpose of doing this in-depth interview is to focus on the Malaysian film distribution companies' motivation of importing films from China, as well as relevant facts which drive their distributions and marketing activities. At the same time, when I try to look at the existing data which prove the success or even a value of the film that are imported from China in the FINAS database. So that's why I also use the archive research methodology to try to understand from the statistical perspective. I think here come to the very interesting and very important part that is all about sharing about the research findings. And of course, I provide the necessary discussions based on the findings as well. In this study, I basically have three components of findings. Firstly, is all about the business models of the theatrical release of film imported from China in Malaysia. And secondly, I will definitely have to present how the box office performance of the film imported from China in Malaysia. And lastly, if we witness the box office performance in Malaysia context and certain problems are identified, how we supposed to tackle the problem and how I can address the issues the distributors voice out. That's why the third section is focused on the Malaysian distributors' concerns. Let us look at the first findings, which is focusing on business model. And they're basically two models of theatrical release of a film imported from China across Malaysia. The number one is the Chinese Film Festival organized by the authorities. Number two are commercial film screening by local distribution companies and movie theaters. These have become the important two models that Malaysian audiences have chances to see the film imported from China. If we try to look at the first model, which is the Chinese Film Festival organized by the authority, the latest one is this year, happened in January. I think that's the time before the COVID-19 pandemic in Malaysia. In GSC Mid Valley, we have China Film Week 2020. There are 7 films were selected and released in Malaysia. But all the 7 films were selected and released in Malaysia actually were not very close to all of us, which means in terms of a time or year of releasing. The one which considered very close to us is the 2 films that were released in 2018, entitled A Smile from the Mountain and Hello, Mr. Billionaire. And the other films were mainly produced between 2015 and 2017. And the film posters probably may indicate the genres. For example, the first one is actually called the Xuanzang. It's depicting the monk of China, and this very famous monk from China, Xuanzang Dashi. And the others, including the comedy, drama, sport, romance, and etc. And genre-wise, very diverse. And I personally involved with one of the film festival this year in Malaysia, which is called the Malaysia International Film Festival. And this International Film Festival also showcased a collection of film across the world. China also has some submissions. And this year, there are only 2 submissions from mainland China. As a programmer, along with the other programmers, we work together. We identify one of them deserve for this festival screening session. So in the future, when you have chances to enjoy the movie under Malaysia International Film Festival, I would like to encourage you guys to watch the only Chinese film imported from China during the festival. I believe most of the audiences have chances to watch the film released in Malaysia from the commercial screening. But there are also 2 sort of distributors for commercial theatrical release of film imported from China. And one of them is called a local distributors, and the other is a local exhibition integrated distributors. As what I put the logos underneath each sort of distributors, you will see the differences, which means the distributors will definitely find the best or suitable movies to import into Malaysia, such as Mega Film Distribution, MM2 Entertainment, but GSC is the exhibition integrated distributors. They also have theater, and they also have distribution business sectors as well. But when I try to interview the people from these organizations, I found it's quite very interesting that different companies have different strategies and also their tactics to select the film to ensure the box office performance. But some of them may have different concerns on the box office thanks to the organizational structure. So from here, maybe you have some curiosities why Dr. Wang mentioned this. Let's look at the few distributors as what I spelled out just now. Mega Film Distribution is actually the distributor who bring the Wolf Warrior 2 to Malaysia. Thanks to this wonderful record, I believe they have more confidence to import more films across Malaysia. After the success of Wolf Warrior No. 2, they also bring over other films. And fortunately, some other films that distributed by the company break the record of Wolf Warrior, such as The New King of Comedy that was released in 2019. And even these films scored 11 billion ringgit. And this is some of the new records this company made. MM2 is another case. MM2 is a company which have different branches in the world. They have an office in Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong, and even in the US. When they have this kind of a network underneath the company structure, they have a very wonderful source collections, which means some of the film released in Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong, they will able to find the source of the film and distribute to the other regions. So that's why in Malaysia, MM2 is the company which distribute the most film from China. That's why from the list you could see after the success of Wolf Warrior in 2017, there actually 15 titles were released in Malaysia. However, you could probably see the box office couldn't compare with a mega film distribution, and the number may say clearly. I shall not elaborate further on this, but it's just a phenomenon for you to see that. As what I mentioned, there are so many films imported by these few companies. They have different preferences, and unfortunately, I couldn't let you guys to hear the audio. And maybe I just show you guys a few clips of the movie entitled "A Journey of Happiness," and this is actually the best seller of the film that MM2 imported from China. And this is actually a co-production. It is a co-production between Malaysia and also Hong Kong, China. And this is a film broadcasted and released in the time of Chinese New Year. That's why from the even design of the logo itself says clearly it is all about the celebrations of Chinese New Year. And the release time is the first day of Chinese New Year. In 2019, that was 5th of February. Although you couldn't hear the audio, unfortunately, because some of the technical limitations. However, I believe you could see the signage of Malaysia, for example, Ipoh, and the famous tourist place in Ipoh. And there's so many wonderful scenarios, landscape in Malaysia portrayed, and even people holding the durian. I believe these are some of the interesting co-production between Malaysia and also Hong Kong, China. And that's
Okay,
why I want,
Doctor Wang,
yes,
sorry. I just before I forgot, I just would like to ask you whether this film, A Journey of Happiness, I mean, because it was shown earlier this year, um, and many people are maybe interested to watch this now that they have seen the trailer. Is this movie now sold in DVD or is it streamed anywhere legally online? I'm
so far
sorry,
I
I have
don't
to
think
interrupt you there.
any legal streaming of this film. And I think for the DVD, I also not yet see any, but I think if Speedy still survive, probably you can check over there.
All right, sorry to disturb you. Please carry on.
Yeah. Anyhow, this is some of the representative work from MM2, and it scored quite good. And this is the another phenomenon that I want to address, because of most of the Chinese people enjoy watching films in the time when they celebrate Chinese New Year, and that's why MM2 has the tendencies to import the film, fulfill the mood of Chinese New Year, and that's why the film just now I showed to you The Journey of Happiness is definitely a successful example, which captured the needs of local audiences' appreciations and also their interest. It's all about the family, about the happiness. At the same time, they understand more about the cultural conflict between the two areas. And I believe it is a very interesting film to watch. The other film imported by MM2, which happened lately, is called the My People, My Country. I believe this is also a film may give a lot of overseas Chinese some inspirations because this film has several components which illustrate the people's life in Hong Kong and the time when the People's Republic of China was established in 1949, and also the current life in the rural area of China. So it have some small characters, maybe grassroots or any people from the bottoms of from the bottom of the structure of the society. And that's why we have the story called the My People, My Country. But there is a one piece produced in Hong Kong, and unfortunately I can't show you guys the audio. And this is one of the film that MM2 imported, and this movie even was supported by the China Embassy in Malaysia. The former ambassador, the Excellency Bai Tian, had attended this screening, and also this is a moment when they celebrate the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China, and that's the time this film was released in 2019. At the same time, imported to Malaysia. It also bring a lot of attentions among Malaysian Chinese population. Let's look at some of the part of the trailer which are indicated in these images. And this one entitled The Return. Return is actually the moment when Britain returned Hong Kong to China in 1997. So this is a historical moment when Chinese government will take over Hong Kong. So they have a debate on when they're allowed to raise a national flag. So you can see in this trailer that depicts the Hong Kong police change the head badge. So you could see that when MM2 have different branches in China, in Malaysia, Singapore, and in the US, they have diverse sources of film. And some of the tendencies or the preferences or criteria will be different from the other distributors as mega film distributions. GSC has demonstrated another criteria to select the film. According to the record I have, actually GNC do not actually import the film from mainland China. The film that they distributed are primarily from Hong Kong, China. The only 4 titles were distributed by GSC after the success of Wolf Warrior 2 in 2017. So after 2017, I collect the data from GSC. These are the only 4. The number 1 champion of the box office earning film is The Night of a Shadow Between Yin and Yang, casting by Jackie Chan. I believe Jackie Chan is the brand will definitely bring a lot of Malaysian cinema goers' attention, and also they want to watch the latest film acted by Jackie Chan. And the other films also have very good box office record compared the other 2 distributors as what I discussed. And I believe GSC play the game very well. They know what films are sellable in Malaysia. So that's why they do not import many films from mainland China or Hong Kong, China. But whatever they import in Malaysia are definitely sellable. And people in Malaysia will appreciate these films. And that's why the box office is a best indication of their marketing strategies. Okay, so this is actually the GSC's trailer of the film, as what I mentioned. Jackie Chan's latest film released in Malaysia. Actually, he acts as a dictator. Jackie Chan's film. This costume film is a comedy, and definitely Jackie Chan has his signature elements, which is kung fu. At the same time, they employ the latest animation skills and techniques. The actors and actresses were from mainland China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, and very diverse combinations. So you will see some of the famous actors from Taiwan. Just now you could see one of the boy, and the ladies from China, Jackie Chan from Hong Kong, and this is the trailer of The Night of Shadow between Yin and Yang. So if you're interested, you can search the title and you will probably see the other trailers and even full movie. Unfortunately, I don't see any legal release on Netflix or any platforms of this film. But if you're interested, you can search more opportunities to see this film by Jackie Chan. As what I mentioned, I tried to approach the distributors in Malaysia, especially the leading distributors who import the film from China to Malaysian audiences. And I was a little bit shocked to know that there are not many distributors who regularly import film from China to Malaysia, quite small number. So that's why you couldn't see a long list to display these are the distributors or the exhibition integrate distributors who have this business doing importing films from China. So that's why I try to interview them and understand more clearly. I believe there are certain messages we want to understand from their point of view. They told me that although there are so many ways to determine a box office, for example, we need to do advertising, we need people to write film review, or we may have a word of the film that may be helpful for the local audiences to appreciate the film. But these film distributors, they mentioned they encounter financial difficulties to promote these films locally. So they do not have a sufficient budget, even as the other local productions have maybe roadside posts or different slot for TV station to promote the film or the other relevant channels. They probably have a less budget to promote the film. But when I did the other study, actually I did some other studies to understand more about how Malaysian audiences appreciate the film imported from China. And this interview and also, I did a survey, and survey tells me that Malaysian audiences much more concerned on the story rather than marketing promotion or the star of the movie. It's very interesting and also a little bit contradictions. On one way, the distributors wanted to have a more budget to produce or to manage promotion of the film. On another way, the local audiences actually do look at the importance of the story itself. I think I can understand this clearly because all the audiences would say, I definitely watch the film because of the content, because of the catchy elements of narrative, or maybe the star itself. But most people do not recognize the star promoting activities, but they do recognize the story. However, by letting the audiences know about the wonderful stories, the appealing stories, they still need to rely on certain promotional activities from where audiences are able to perceive this message. So I can understand why the distributors mentioned they encounter financial difficulties to promote these films locally. And when they discuss together with me about the box office performance, they also tell me they do have expectations on archiving the data of box office earning of these imported Chinese film. So they say we do not know how about our competitors' performance in terms of the film imported from mainland China. So that's why they do looking forward to having some platforms to showcase the box office earning of these film imported from China and their performance in Malaysia as well. So that's why when I collect the data, they also wanted to know how about the other competitive box office earning of the film imported from China. I think this is a very interesting phenomenon and brings the value of my studies as well. So try to let you guys see a clear pictures. I make a very lengthy conclusion, but you don't need to worry about it. I never expect to read through as I mentioned. The important message from today's sharing is all about the transnational cinema, but you probably not see any co-productions component in my sharing because transnational cinema, I touch a little bit, only one film about the journey of the happiness. This is only one film, but I do not specifically discuss about it. Although there are so many agreements signed between Malaysia and China, people have agreement to produce the film in local and international setting. I do know that Finas signed this agreement earlier. Then there are certain films are in the process. So hopefully in the future I can integrate these discussions together to look at how co-productions can be discussed from the perspective of transnational cinema. But we have to understand that there's so little empirical inquiries into the consumption of assorted international production sources in the context of individual markets. Malaysia has its own positions, and we also want to know how the diverse ethnic groups in Malaysia determine the consumptions of from imported from China, and that's an interesting area for us to study. I did some of the studies earlier about the consumptions. It's already a super journal, so if you're interested, actually you can search it about it. And also, this study was best to describe the symmetrical consumption of a film from mainland China across Malaysia by engaging with leading marketing players. I do not have chances to interview the others, but according to my interview with these leading distributors, they say that there are some, but they do not regularly import the film from China. They even do not import one single film in a year. Perhaps quite a long time ago, they import one film. After a few years, okay, there was one chance to import another film, they will import another film. This interview only involved these distributors who regularly distribute the film from China. You can see from the box office record, these companies regularly engaging with distributions, and they have regularly annual data. I believe cultural association between Malaysia and China can help to release more and more films from Malaysia across China. But of course, we have to acknowledge that these local distributors, exhibition integrate distributors, have their own criteria to identify work, which we consider a fit to the local cinema theater, and have some of them successfully obtain the remarkable box office earning. That's also a motivation for these distributors and exhibition integrate distributors to follow the same criteria to import more films from China. And by doing so, we are definitely doing cultural exchange through film. And this is a very interesting and very necessary cultural exchange between the two countries. As a film has its own language to communicate with its audiences. And this framework definitely permits the transfer of a screen license and more importantly, facilitate and realizations of exchange value from informational and cultural commodities. And that's why these studies serve a very important aims that want everybody to know how these strategies occur in different contexts. Precisely, Malaysia is one of them. There are so many valuable studies supposed to be done if we try to recognize the important role of China in the context of cultural trading. So hopefully you can get some of the message from today's sharing. And this is all about my study. I will leave some time for you guys to do some interactions with me. However, before that, if you're interested to communicate with me after this sharing session, you're welcome to connect with me via Facebook, Instagram, or even you can write to my email address. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Wang, for that very extensive and I would say very rich presentations. I mean, like if I were from my experience as a film fan, as a movie fan, I mean, I grew up knowing that usually prior to 1997, which was when Hong Kong was returned to China, so
Mm,
most of the films, Chinese films,
mm,
we consider as Chinese films are Cantonese films.
yep.
Um, Hong. And I would say that this is because of the popularity of Hong Kong serial drama, the station's TVB, which was shown every day on our local television stations. And then also because of Jackie Chan and the popularity of Raymond Wong and his Happy Go series, um, and also Canto Pop, up to a point where our local people and all these popular Canto Pop singers like Jackie Chung, Andy Lau, Aaron Kwok,
Andy Lau, yeah.
Andy Lau and Leslie Chung, the late Leslie
Mm,
Chung. Yeah,
mm,
but for me, I think my experience with a movie from China
mm,
was when Race the Red Lantern was shown in our local cinema right
mm,
after it was nominated for an Oscar Academy Award. And I think after that, somehow Gong Li managed to become I would say a household name, but when people said popular artists, okay, popular stars from China, Gong
mm,
Li came to mind.
yes,
And of course, after that, her films such as The Story of Chuju and Farewell My Concubine, these were also shown in our local cinemas, but not as many as Cantonese films.
yes.
So, from your experience, why do you think that only films selected directors like Zhang Yimou and also Chen Kaiji was able to these films were able to penetrate international market as compared to maybe some other directors that I may not encountered like prior to 1997.
I believe a film is kind of a cultural product. If we are the advertisers, we definitely see the values of the brand. So that's why these film directors has its own brand value. For example, Zhang Yimou, Chen Kaige, these are the representative film directors of the fifth generations of filmmakers in China. And they made a lot of great movies, and they were recognized by the international film festival, such as Cannes and etc. And because of these awards, people start to recognize these people. By doing so, these people having its own brand values, then it definitely will be easily to be promoted in other countries, including Malaysia. I think this is a phenomenon happened in 1990s. Those films you mentioned are mostly produced and released in 1990s. And you could probably see that after 2000 and less film bring our attention. I mean, as Malaysian, you could see less film that you can spell out. You could not even point out any successful cases after Gong Li, after Zhang Yimou, or any other well-known and reputed film directors from mainland China. But anyhow, the film that I recognized today, which is The Wolf Warrior 2, released in 2017, it became the record breaker. And that's why in the past more than 10 years, we have no other single names can be mentioned until this film released in Malaysia. People start to say, oh, there's some of the films produced by mainland China that was well done, that was very worth to watch. Although people in Malaysia will use Cantonese or Hokkien to communicate, and that can bring the kind of connections between Hong Kong film because people in the film made in Hong Kong, China speak Cantonese. and the language itself become a vital rule for them to appreciate, because it become a channel for them to, even for some youngsters, they say, okay, my family doesn't speak Cantonese, but actually when I watch Cantonese movies and TV series, and that's my best guru, that's where I learn this language, and become another function you can see. And I believe when China has more and more quality works with very well branded directors, let's say we follow the authorship or any kind of tactics, and more brands can be known by the word cinema, including the 6 generations of filmmakers in China, such as Jia Zhangke. Probably not many people in the other nations know about this name. Jia Zhangke is one of the film director representing the 6 generations of a filmmaker of mainland China. But after that, we do not say any 7th generations. These are the active generations who still actively produce wonderful movies. And these filmmakers' work are recognized by the same International Film Festival as the 5th generations of filmmakers in China. So hopefully we will have a more wonderful works to be shared across the world. Dr. Ahmad, you are mute.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
I just would like to actually mention this to our students. Sekiranya ada sesiapa yang ada soalan, okay, boleh bertanyakan sama ada secara langsung ataupun boleh type di box. Okay, kalau ada yang segan nak tanya, saya boleh tolong terjemahkan kepada Dr. Wang ya, kalau sesiapa ada soalan. Alright, so if you have any questions, please let us know. Alright. In the meantime, if I can just bring back to the power of marketing, it seems that once, if I can refer back to the case of Gong Li, because like I've said, like not many mega stars came after her. I believe the next one was Zhang Ziyi, but even she was no longer being seen. Maybe she have films in China, but internationally we hardly see her anymore.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
do you think that with recent Hollywood movies, including some Chinese actress, like I remember one Hollywood production,
Fan Bingbing.
Fan Bingbing, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you see, like, I think that is also important. So instead of film, like if these actors are participating or penetrating into Hollywood productions or European productions, do you consider that as another way to also market China to the world?
It does work actually. If you try to look at the so-called producers of these few films, they also have a lot of producers from mainland China. And when you see the credits in the beginning, you will see who are the producers. And some of them are not really Hollywood producers. They're from China, including Wanda, including Alibaba Film. These are the new names start to be recognized. And when they have these collaborations or co-productions, more and more actors from mainland China have chances to be recognized by the Western audiences or even the world cinema goers. And this is another topic. That's why when I talk about the transnational cinema studies, most of the work focused on the transnational films examples or cases between US and China. But looking at the Asian context, quite less. People witness this phenomenon because more and more, as you mentioned, more and more Chinese actors and actresses doing productions in Hollywood. But at the same time, the revenue is actually coming from China. We do have a sponsorship from China. We have a different ways to collaborate. And that's the reason why people doing these studies from the transnational studies point of view by looking at the case in Hollywood. And that's actually good windows for us to look at the transnational cinema in the context of Chinese cinema. And Malaysia or Asian regions hardly to see, but there are some people doing these similar studies by looking at the Korean and Japanese cinema as their example. For example, we do witness a number of Japanese films exported to the overseas and bring the world recognitions, and the worldwide audiences appreciate this Japanese animation. The same goes to K-pop And people also start to realize that China has the similar pathway to do the same thing. And we will see more and more works that illustrate the point as what I discussed. I think this is the thing we will embrace.
Okay, and this collaboration between like your topic about Malaysia and China
Mm,
is somewhat unique in
mm,
its own way. Um, has have there been any other cultural uh, joint cultural project that you may have, like if you have encountered maybe between Singapore and China or other countries that has a huge population of Chinese descent? Yeah.
So we do not have any latest record that we can say between Singapore and China we have a co-productions, but I think there are some in the early decades that including TV series. So a number of TV series were done in China, but acting and directed by the Singaporean crew. And this is some of the examples we have. And Netflix also broadcast these film and TV series titles, but I couldn't name them over here because I couldn't remember the English title. But there are some. I think this is um, the discussion I did last year for the Blue Book of Asian Cinema. I also mentioned the MOA signing, which is focused on one film title, and these films are still in production, I guess, but yet to be released because of a COVID-19. I think even the production process were very much delayed. And this is the latest way we will see how the film personnel in China and Malaysia doing more collaborations. And I'm actually opening my book chapter. And the film title is called I Believe. Malaysian and China co-production movie I Believe. They have even a signing ceremony in 2019, and they have this conference released on the 25th of November 2019, which is quite lately happened. This film was expected to start in 2020 April and March, but I believe COVID-19 pandemics affect this entire process. Until now, we yet hear any news about the Malaysian-China co-production, I believe. So looking forward to have this. Actually, even the actress you mentioned, Fan Bingbing, she involved one production that take place in Penang, Malaysia before as well. This is also a way that people doing a lot of collaborations, but just lack of channels to know about it. These works, maybe because of the different interests of distribution criteria and etc. So that's why I think from the study I did, we probably could see the distributors' criteria, these different preferences that become so-called limitations, or maybe become also a chance for people to know more about the film imported from China. But definitely, this become it's like a gatekeeper. You're doing these things, then we're definitely not as the other. Um, I mean, people in the Great China regions have chances to watch the film at the same time. When I interviewed these distributors, they also mentioned they have another concern is the premium time. They say that okay, all the imported from mainland China or Hong Kong or other part of the mainland China. I mean China. So they say they do concern on the time when they allow to release a film in Malaysia. They do not want the time of release is behind the one in China. So they wish to have the same premiere sessions in Malaysia. But unfortunately, when I try to compare the premiere time of selected film, I could see Malaysia always one day after the premiere in China. So it would definitely give some time for them to doing. I mean, these distributors they mentioned, they do have their concerns about the pirate. If the film goes to pirate versions available on the internet, they worry the box office will be affected. But nowadays, I think Chinese government did very well on these copyright, intellectual properties, and all the films they release on the internet do have its own license if it is allowed. So you hardly to see any pirate movies nowadays on the recognized platform, including iQIYI. I believe iQIYI is one of the platform have the MOA with Astro. This is one of the Chinese video platform in which people can watch a lot of film production TV series. By doing this collaboration between iQIYI and Astro, audiences in Malaysia have the same access to the film and also TV productions as the Chinese audiences. I think these are some of the platforms Astro promoted once before.
Yeah, because I think you highlighted the iQIYI. Now a lot of local Malaysian dramas are also shown on the platform. I
Mm,
mean, previously TV stations or they actually like showed this drama simultaneously on their YouTube official YouTube channel.
mm,
Now I think they are sending them over all to iQIYI, as you have mentioned. I received a question here
mm,
from one of our audience.
mm.
Research, have you actually come across any ideological differences? Have you come across any ideological differences? I mean, from the government as well, and and also what have been produced so far.
I think the rating system is different. In Malaysia, you have a U universal, you have a PG-13, you have a P-19. However, in China, we do not have a such rating system. And whatever the film that you release in China could be considered U, universal. And that also will determine how the ideology would be presented and represented. And there's certain differences, of course, between these two regions, and that's why people may have a different perceptions towards each categories of productions, and that's definitely bring barriers between the production made in one region and the market where you are. And we have to find the film which local audiences could accept and could perceive and even appreciate. Ideology definitely play a vital role. So if we talk about propaganda, I'm so glad to see that not many people highlight the propaganda in their research, although there are some, but not many, because the film that the distributor selected for international release does not carry strong ideology message. As you could maybe see from the list from China Film Week 2020, although there are only 7 films, but all the 7 films does not have any tendencies to tell you about the particular ideologies the Chinese people have. It is all about the people's life. It is all about the stories you may have, but just happen in that setting. So it has the connections between audiences in different background and different countries. I think this is a very important way for distributors and the others to select the film for release. I believe online platforms does play an important role nowadays, because when I try to also publish another book chapter on the audio and the video industry blue book for the publisher in China, I also study Malaysian context. It's a very amazing to see there are various of online platforms in Malaysia. Media Prima has its own, for example, Dim Sum and the others. It's a tendencies that we cannot avoid it, we cannot avoid from this trend. And we have to embrace this kind of changes by knowing, okay, releasing online it would probably become another revenue income generation, because iQIYI in mainland China does provide subscription services. They only have a small range of free watch category, which means you no need to pay for anything for watching the movie. But as the member of AIG, you have to pay the fee. It's actually buying the access to watch movies. I believe it become another income for any movie or productions. I hope it will happen soon in Malaysia as well, because now I think in Malaysia most of these materials are free for people to watch.
Okay, because you mentioned that in China there was no like rating system.
Mm,
So, which leads me to the next question. Please enlighten me. Previously, one of the films that I've mentioned, Farewell My Concubine, was for a while was not allowed to be shown in China because of its the issues, which is one of them is like about homosexuality. So
mm,
I was wondering, like, how is the censorship board now
mm,
going around with movies? I believe that these days, in addition to whatever being considered as a taboo subject,
mm,
how censorship deals with violence,
mm.
nudity, and maybe ideologies that may not fit well with the government.
Actually, censorship in China does not change dramatically. As what you mentioned just now, all about the nudities, violence, and sex are still prohibited, including the LGBT, and all these are still in the same situation. And this actually the thing that you mentioned. Certain films are not allowed to screen, and even some of the directors are not allowed to make films as a penalty in 2 years or even longer time, and it still happened. Yeah.
All right. So in the students, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions for Dr. Wang, otherwise it will be like a conversation just between me and him.
Yeah.
We can talk about films all day long. I mean, I'm very like previously, like as I've mentioned, there are so many things actually from China that I myself like discovered, but mainly in the 90s as compared. I mean, like all these works done in Mandarin, and also like translated novels from writers from China like Yu Hua. You know, these novels are also marketed widely in our country. I think this is like right after 1997, and and we were also introduced to Fei Wong or Wong Fei as she was
Mm,
also recognized.
mm,
So, do you think that what are the possibilities of maybe like our performers, they may or may not be
mm,
actually like using Mandarin, but the possibilities of them, I know one, Sheila Amza, who is actually like, if what I've been read is considered true,
mm,
she is considered popular in China.
mm.
So, how open are the Chinese audience in accepting international performers, especially from Asian countries?
I think this is a really good question, and also I also happen to know many of our Malaysian film directors attempted to do their film productions in China, and especially the successful film directors in the past 5 or 10 years, including the director for The Journey. I believe most of our Malaysians were proud to say, okay, The Journey actually is also a record-breaking film, and still top one Mandarin Malaysian film in the history of the Malaysian film industry. So I think this is a good way that we still see the good effort made by the Malaysian film directors to reach international market. And lately, he also produced another film. Um, I think I couldn't remember the English title, but the Chinese title is Da Da Da. And this film was imported to China, and also it has become popular. It released in 85 cinema, and it's also a record making for Malaysian film. I believe there are certain news also cover that Finance also expressed the congratulations to the director and to the film because of the success in the China markets as a Malaysian film director's work. And also, there are some directors develop their own careers in the Great China region, and lately there are also some other box office earning record make movie. I also forget the English title. So it is just happened in the beginning of 2020 and the end of 2019. And this is directed by the Malaysian Chinese director. The film title is called The Ship Without a Shepherd. And this is the latest film directed by the Malaysian director. I also type it in the chat box so for the students to search. This film was adapted from an Indian movie, and this Malaysian Chinese director adopt the idea and make it a Chinese version. But the geographic setting was in Thailand, but the storyline and the plot conflict and everything were adopted from the Indian film, The Ship Without Shivered. So this is another successful example. In these few years, Chinese market have more accommodations for Indian movie, and that's why we have a lot of Indian movies exported to China markets. The same goes to Vietnam, and these are the two regions getting more recognitions in terms of film production. And that's even arise more academic discussions about Bollywood movies and the new generations of filmmakers in Vietnam. But we do not witness many discussions about Southeast Asia except Vietnam. So I hope by recognizing these few Malaysian Chinese film directors' work in mainland China, still will generate more opportunities for the other film directors. I believe this because the market in China is so big, and the population itself, the market itself are so attractive. And I believe many of you guys are concerned on the current income of all the cinema operators because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But after the lockdown period is over in China, people back to normal. In October, there is a one film entitled 800, and this film secured very wonderful box office earning in China, and it becomes a top 10 most popular Chinese movie in the history. Although because of the pandemic, people may not have more chances to watch film in the cinema, but because the the narrative itself, the story, and the productions, and many reasons, people favorite this movie a lot. It's entitled 800. Is actually about war. 800 is actually a war movie, and I also try to study the preferences by the Chinese audiences in mainland China, especially by looking at the box office earning record. Top 10 films are all made in China. But if you try to look at the popularities or the box office earning of each film released in one nation, you could see the differences. When I compare this with some other areas and regions, not every country has the same pattern as Chinese market. In all the top 10 film released in China, these are, I mean, the top 10 popular movies in China are all local production. The only film that ranked top 20 is one of the Marvel's series. I think it's a Endgame of the Marvel's series. That's the only one. But if you try to look at the Malaysians' data, especially from the FINAS, you will probably see another outcome. Yeah.
I was also actually trying to read about this ship without a shepherd, and the Malaysian Chinese director's name is Sam Kwa,
Yeah.
and I just realized that Joan Chen was also in this film. I mean, like
Mm.
for me, I look at Joan Chen as I rarely watch her perform in either Mandarin or any other Chinese dialects because
Mm.
when I first encountered Joan Chen, she actually acted in an English film.
Yeah.
The Last Emperor. So it was
Yeah.
kind of like I was quite surprised to see this. Anyway, in addition to Sam Kwa, I'm if there are any other Malaysian directors work like making it big in China, but that's kind of different in Taiwan because we have like, for example, Tsai Ming Liang,
Mm-hmm.
who was also actually from Kuching, Sarawak, Malaysia,
Yeah.
but his films were rather, I would say, controversial, and I believe maybe may not pass the censorship board. Not even here in um, a lot of people were actually watching his movies illegally. So, do you think that it's like this is like a general question about films? Some people said that you need to create something controversial. You need to actually go against the cultural norms and with an international audience in your mind. Do you think that is actually a proper way
Mm,
of thinking in if
mm.
you want to actually represent your people and market a film directly from your country?
I think we have to the purpose of making film. Making a film, we definitely need to tell the story happen to our own people because we familiarize with all the context, characterizations, stories, history background, cultural background. We tell the stories from our own heart all the time. I think this is the motivation for the directors to produce work, especially for those people who still uphold the importances of authors as a film author. And that's actually the reason why people want to highlight the importance of his or her own culture in the film production. Even though you will see Zhang Yimou went to the international stage by producing a lot of film with the Chinese elements, Chinese culture, including the latest film, The Great War, one of the latest film, The Great War. The Great War is actually an English movie, but the entire movie is all about the fairy tales of the Great War of China. When people have these foundations of the culture of China or the Great War of China, these interests may be leveraged. By then, you can integrate certain narrative styles, the dramatic code that the international audiences could perceive. Then it could probably work. So that's why when people have these skills to integrate your perceptions of your own culture, at the same time you understand how the Hollywood genre works, then you can reach wide audiences. And that's the reason why we have the genre studies. The genre definitely give these formulas. It's kind of ingredients cooking for one dish. Then you will know how to cook the dish with your own ingredients. It's like you having your own way to cook, let's say, a fried rice. But different people have different ways to cook the fried rice. However, the culture must be there. It's still a rice. It still doesn't go away with other ingredients because people still could see this is the core values of the culture that you represent. And this is quite vital for any film directors because lately, actually, I interviewed the film director for another latest international film entitled "The Story of" I forget. It's one. It's actually the winner for the Golden Horse in Taiwan lately. His name is Zhang Zian. So let me try to search the English title for you guys. This is the title of the movie that Malaysian film Chinese directors produced and recognized in the overseas again. And when I interviewed this director, he also highlighted the importances of our own culture, which is a Malaysian culture, because he grows in Kedah. So Kedah is the physical background for him to tell the stories. And this story respect the importances of local dialects. So it embraces the local Hokkien dialects, Malay, and other dialects. So Kedah, I think, is a close to border, and even they have a certain Thailand kind of dialects integrated. And this is actually the reason why I mentioned, because people still want to highlight their own stories and their own culture. But the way they tell the worldwide cinema goers is by telling their own culture. And this is actually a message from most of the directors I interviewed, even including when I interviewed the director of The Journey. And he also said that after 2011, the worldwide trend is to tell our own stories to the world cinema goers. And we have to know how to tell our own stories to the outsiders. I think this is the effort they are doing. I believe this is something quite right. The same goes to the film that, if you can see the list that the China Film Week, they select 7 film titles, only 7, but the only 7 film titles representing the contemporary Chinese modern society. Also, it tells the ancient Chinese history. It tells some of the fairy tales. It tells the lifestyles of current setting. And this is something very close to all of the people, even though they are speaking Chinese. But there are certain grounds for people to get each other and understand each other.
Okay, before that, please allow me to actually speak in bahasa.
Boleh.
Ada tak daripada urus setia penganjur yang dah sediakan link borang kehadiran? Ada ke? Kalau ada, boleh minta share. Kalau tidak, saya akan bagi saya punya borang yang saya baru buat sendiri tadi. Okay. Okay, once again, are there any questions for Dr. Wang? So Dr. Wang, any advice? Or there are a number of film students here, and I'm sure that they already have in their mind what they want to do, how they're going to do it. But if they want to actually say find an audience, especially like international audience to cross culture, what would be some good advice that you can actually share with these students?
There are also, I think this question is connect to the previous question, and also connect to the way I ask the question, answer the question as well. Because as Malaysian film directors, you should know what you should be proud of. I think Pascal is one of the film that I was so amazed, because I believe most of you guys watched the film entitled Pascal, and also this is one of the film I like very much, because you probably had to see similar genres in Malaysia film industry. But Pascal is some of the genre that bring us to another level of understanding on Malaysia film. For me, as a foreigner, as a people who study film, you will start to appreciate, okay, when people doing something extraordinary, and you will have my heart. I think that's the strategy and the techniques even the very well-known Chinese director Zhang Yimou did in the 1990s. Whichever film he produced, he will revamp the entire skills, revamp entire elements in the previous work. So each time he will present a new genre, a new way to present a story, and you have to know how to break the shell, how to think out of the box. But at the same time, I believe this is some of the challenges that people have to see the ideological message. Because if a film without telling something that reaches our mind or even heart, the film is just for the sake of entertainment. I believe it is the purpose of having a film, but it won't be lasting. The reason why we like to watch the films like Li An, The Life of Pi, or some film like that, because people have their own thought, their ideology, their thinking, their own belief embedded in the entire storytelling. So I believe you, as a film students, you need to understand how these messages, how this ideological thinking, or these altogether can be embedded in the film productions. And also, people could understand this by following the film language. Film language is quite important tools for people to use, because this is the universal language every people could understand, even though we don't have any decent trainings on film. But this is to fulfill the psychological patterns, and people may have these implications, and their perceptions will be there. And that's the most important things to do. But of course, the local market may not sometimes give you an exciting feedback sometimes. If you try to look at the archive from Finas, I think Finas now do not make the data available for the ordinary viewers, because last time you can see all the box office earning of each film. Now I think they removed this function. But if you have chance to see the archived data, you will see what kind of film are favored by Malaysian audiences. As a film student, you still need to understand the market nature. The market nature will tell you how you can develop your own career in this environment. I understand everybody have his or her own ideal. That this ideal may give you a motivation and drive, but you still have to look at the setting of reality, which allows your film to be watched and appreciated by massive local audiences. With local recognitions, you are able to move further. I think this is quite necessary for people local demands, local market nature, at the same time, the ideologies representing your own culture, belief, and etc.
Okay. All right. It looks that our students are
They don't have
actually
question.
shy. Yeah, I think they are shy.
It's okay.
Yeah,
But yeah,
and but I actually enjoyed because this session, especially since I got to actually like hear your opinion or someone's from China, the opinion from someone's from China about all the questions that I've had with me all this while. So on behalf of the organizing committee of the online symposium, we would like to thank you, okay, Associate Professor Dr. Wang, for your time. And I would like to also extend our invitation to you to the FITA Wave Award ceremony, which will be conducted online in January. A proper invitation will be forwarded to you very soon once we have settled down with all the logistic matters. So this FITA Wave Awards is actually an award show to recognize the works of our budding filmmakers, whether from UITM or other higher learning institutions around Malaysia, or perhaps wherever that you can actually reach us, as well as a dance competition for our youngsters as well. So hopefully that you are able to join us uh, at the Wave Awards sometime in January 2021. I also would like to inform everyone that next week, next Wednesday, will be our fifth and final series in our online symposium, FITA Wave Online Symposium. And next week, the topic is on creative industry management. I wish to extend, on behalf of the committee members again, we wish to also extend our gratitude once again to our sponsor, Yayasan Hasanah and Finas, for giving us this platform to conduct this online symposium. And Dr. Wang, I think soon we're expecting the write-up from you for our publication.
thank you very much for the invitation to attend the virtual event in January. It would be my honor to attend it, and definitely I'm looking forward for the details of this invitation. And of course, I would like to share all my findings through the book chapter. The book chapter actually is ready for share. Hopefully, it will be another chance for me to see you guys in the book chapter form. Thank you very
Yeah.
much once again.
And I hope that this will not be the last time that we are meeting together to each
Hopefully.
other. Hopefully, we can meet in person in the near future when things are getting better. You know, when the numbers are decreasing dramatically, then maybe we can pay a visit. We would like to visit you in your new university, or maybe you can come and visit us.
Pleasure
Yeah.
is mine. I definitely looking forward to visit you, or definitely we welcome you and your students to visit us. We can have more discussions because I think we can have a very interesting idea exchange, because I also direct a center called the Center for ASEAN and the Chinese Screen Studies. Under the center, actually, I organize various events. So hopefully we can organize more events that can invite you and your students to attend.
We're looking forward to that as well. Okay.
Yeah.
So stay safe and take care and stay away from crowded places.
Thank you for the reminder.
Alright.
Thank you once again, all the students.
Ya, dan terima kasih kepada semua yang menyertai simposium pada kali ini. Kita akan berjumpa lagi pada minggu hadapan, waktu yang sama. Mungkin akan moderator bersama dengan Profesor Madya, Dr. Muhammad Syuhaidi Abu Bakar. Alright, take care and stay safe. Thank you everyone. Don't forget to actually sign your attendance dekat Google Form. I already give the link in the chat box. These are for the participants.
Okay. Jumpa lagi.
Ya, jumpa lagi. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.